The Tragedy of Marc-Vivien Foé. Yo, imagine being at the absolute peak of your life. You're repping your country on the world stage. Millions of fans are screaming your name. The energy is through the roof, and you feel completely invincible. That's exactly where Marc-Vivien Foé was on June 26, 2003. Cameroon was clashing with Colombia in the FIFA Confederations Cup semifinals, literally the ultimate dress rehearsal right before the actual World Cup. Foé was a straight-up beast in the midfield, an absolute powerhouse. But around the 72nd minute, something went horribly, terrifyingly wrong. Out of absolutely nowhere, with no one even near him, Foé just completely collapsed right in the center circle. His eyes rolled back. He was totally unresponsive. The medical staff rushed onto the pitch, desperately trying to give him oxygen, ripping his jersey open, trying everything to bring him back to life. They carried him off on a stretcher, and behind the scenes, doctors spent a brutal 45 minutes performing CPR. But it was too late. He was gone. The football world was left in absolute shivers. So, what actually killed this elite, hyper-fit athlete? It turns out Marc-Vivien Foé was living with a ticking time bomb inside his chest called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM. Let's break down the science of this silent killer. HCM is a genetic condition where the heart muscle walls, especially in the left ventricle, become insanely thick and stiff. Because the muscle gets so bulky, it makes it incredibly hard for the heart to pump blood out to the rest of the body. When an athlete pushes their body to absolute structural limits during a high-stakes match, that thick heart muscle gets starved of oxygen, completely short-circuits, and triggers a chaotic, lethal rhythm called ventricular fibrillation. Basically, the heart stops pumping and just quivers like a bowl of jello, cutting off blood flow to the brain instantly. The dark fate of Andrés Escobar. But look, sometimes the danger isn't an invisible medical condition. Sometimes the beautiful game turns into a straight-up horror movie because of human darkness. Enter Andrés Escobar. Going into the 1994 World Cup in the United States, Colombia was absolutely stacked. People were literally picking them to win the entire tournament. Escobar was their star defender, known as the gentleman of the field. Everyone loved this guy. But then came the group stage match against the US team. In a desperate scramble to block a cross, Escobar stretched out his leg, caught the ball, and accidentally redirected it straight into his own net. An own goal, the ultimate nightmare for any defender. Colombia lost the match, and they were embarrassingly knocked out of the World Cup entirely. Escobar was absolutely devastated, but he bravely chose to return home to Medellin, Colombia, telling everyone that life doesn't end here. Tragically, he was dead wrong. Just 6 days after that elimination, Escobar went out to a nightclub with his friends. In the parking lot around 3 a.m., a group of powerful men cornered him, screaming insults about his own goal. One man pulled out a handgun and shot Escobar 6 times in the back. Get this, the killer reportedly shouted "goal" in the style of a crazy football commentator for every single bullet he fired into Escobar's body. He bled to death in the parking lot, killed over a literal game of football. It was later revealed his killers worked for a massive, powerful drug cartel that had lost millions of dollars betting on that specific World Cup match. The incurable poisoning of Hossein Ben Meloudi. Now, this next story sounds like a straight-up spy thriller plot, but it happened right on a football pitch. Imagine stepping out onto the grass feeling totally fine, but within minutes, your insides are literally tearing themselves apart. That is the bizarre, horrific story of Hossein Ben Meloudi. Ben Meloudi was a star forward repping Algeria, a young phenom with lightning-fast pace and incredible vision. He was actively helping his club fight for a top championship spot. During a highly intense match in Algiers, Ben Meloudi was running hard, chasing down a ball. Suddenly, mid-stride, he grabbed his stomach in absolute agony. He collapsed onto the grass, cramping up violently, sweating profusely, and throwing up right there on the field. The medical team sprinted onto the pitch, completely baffled by what they were seeing. There was no tackle, no collision, nothing. He was rushed to the hospital in the back of an ambulance, but he died before they even reached the emergency room doors. The autopsy report absolutely shocked the nation. Hossein Ben Meloudi didn't have a hidden heart defect. He died from a lethal hyper-aggressive case of severe food poisoning caused by deadly bacterial toxins. The static shock of Tony Alden. On February 25, 1967, opponents Enfield were winning 1-0 when the game was stopped in the 28th minute when recently married Mr. Alden was struck. Imagine playing a game under an ominous stormy sky, and out of nowhere, the sky itself decides to take you out. This is the shocking story of Tony Alden. Tony Alden was a young, rising star playing in an incredibly high-stakes FA Amateur Cup quarter-final match in England. The atmosphere was absolutely electric, but so was the weather. The sky turned completely pitch black, heavy rain started pouring down, and thunder was rumbling loudly in the distance. Despite the sketchy weather, the referee kept the game going. With only 3 minutes left on the clock, Tony was sprinting down the field, completely focused on securing the win. Boom. Out of absolutely nowhere, a blinding, multi-million-volt bolt of lightning ripped through the sky and struck the pitch directly in front of him. The sheer electrical force radiated through the wet grass and entered his body instantly. Tony collapsed to the ground, completely unresponsive. The match was abandoned immediately as players and fans panicked. Medics tried everything to save his badly burned body, but the damage to his nervous system and internal organs was too severe. He tragically passed away the very next day. The official cause of death was high-voltage electrical trauma and immediate cardiac arrest caused by a lightning strike. The historical ghost of Alberto Galateo and the 1934 World Cup shadow. Let's talk about the context surrounding legends like Alberto Galateo, who repped Argentina in the 1934 World Cup. We are talking about the early decades of the World Cup tournament cycles. Back then, playing international football wasn't just a sport, it was a brutal test of survival. Long before modern sports science, players suffered devastating physical conditions that slowly destroyed them from the inside out after severe tournament collisions. Galateo was an absolute powerhouse forward on the pitch, but the extreme, unchecked physical trauma of that era's playing style laid the groundwork for severe life-altering internal conditions. Back in those days, if you took a massive, bone-shattering blow to the lower back or pelvic region, there were no MRI machines to save you. Many players from this early era collapsed years later due to complications from hidden, untreated injuries or catastrophic circulatory issues like deep vein thrombosis, DVT, leading to a pulmonary embolism. Let's break down how a hidden tournament injury can turn into a silent killer. When an athlete experiences severe blunt force trauma to the lower extremities, it can severely damage the walls of the deep veins. This creates a stagnant pool of blood where a massive blood clot forms. Years later, under physical stress, that clot can suddenly break free, travel through the bloodstream, and completely wedge itself into the main artery of the lungs. It completely cuts off the body's ability to oxygenate blood, causing immediate suffocation from the inside out. The tragic fall of Samuel Okparaji, 1990 World Cup qualifiers. If you ask any diehard fan of African football history about the most shocking moment ever witnessed on a pitch, they will tell you about Nigeria's brilliant midfielder, Samuel Okparaji. This one is an absolute heartbreaker, guys. It is August 12th, 1989. Nigeria is playing a brutally intense, high-stakes FIFA World Cup qualifier against Angola in Lagos. The stadium is packed to maximum capacity, suffocatingly hot, and the pressure to reach the 1990 World Cup in Italy is entirely off the charts. Okparaji, who wasn't just an elite athlete, but literally a qualified lawyer with a master's degree, was running the entire show in midfield. Then, in the 77th minute, out of nowhere, he just crumpled forward onto the grass. The players from both teams ran over, frantically trying to wake him up. The medical team rushed onto the field, desperately trying to resuscitate him, but his body was completely limp. He had passed away right there on the pitch, just minutes away from securing a massive step toward the World Cup. The autopsy revealed that Okparaji died from an acute cardiac arrest linked to an enlarged heart and high blood pressure. Under conditions of extreme heat, severe dehydration, and maximum physical exertion, an enlarged heart is forced to work exponentially harder to pump blood. The muscle walls become severely strained, creating a chaotic electrical storm in the heart tissue known as ventricular tachycardia. The heart beats so incredibly fast that it can no longer fill with blood, causing blood pressure to completely drop to zero and causing instant death. The massive enlargement of Serginho, the 2004 Brazilian Championship and global fallout. Yo! What if I told you that sometimes a player steps onto the field knowing their body is literally on the verge of breaking down, but they play anyway because the game is everything to them? That is the absolutely wild and devastating story of Serginho. It's October 27th, 2004. The Brazilian league is in full swing, and São Caetano is locking horns with São Paulo in front of a massive, roaring crowd. Serginho, a rock-solid 30-year-old defender, is out there locking down the backline. Around the 60th minute, while the ball is all the way at the other end of the pitch, the TV cameras suddenly capture something terrifying. Out of nowhere, Serginho just falls to the ground like he's been shot. The nearest players panic instantly, frantically waving their hands for the medical staff. Doctors rush out, performing desperate mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and intense cardiac massages right there on the grass. For 15 agonizing minutes, they try to bring him back. He's rushed into an ambulance and taken straight to the hospital, but it's completely no use. He is pronounced dead shortly after arrival, leaving the entire stadium in absolute shock and silence. Smash that subscribe button right now if you want to keep up with the absolute wildest mysteries and deep dives on the planet.